Hello, everyone. Uh, Moving to the today's topic, the Agentic SDLC blueprint for the autonomous engineering organization. So today we'll be discussing about the strategic playbook for engineering leaders to transition from AI-assisted coding to autonomous multi-agent software delivery systems. So if we look at the traditional SDLC process, right? Before 2, 3 years ago. Hello. Am I audible? Okay. So, talking about the traditional SDLC approach, so 2, 3 years ago, uh, the process looked like this, that uh, based on human instruction or based on market research, the BA would basically create tickets, task level stories, tickets, and overall process. And then the overall coding process itself was manual, and the overall memory of the system was based on the collective human dependence of the developers, BAs, architects, and the overall team who was developing the whole product. And the overall process had manual deliverables, and testing was also manual to a lot of extent with some automation involved, right? Since LLMs came into the picture, the whole shift is now to AI assisted systems. 90% of today's development work is happening in this area. Today, the overall process is driven by human prompt, typically limited to a single file context or a project level context. And the execution is more suggestive, where the human has to give yes or no as an input. And the overall process is session bound, with code snippets being generated with a limited context memory involved. So, moving to what could the future look like, right? The future is more agentic, and hence Agentic SDLC is what we are going to be discussing today. So the overall process of Agentic SDLC is completely goal-oriented. You basically provide a PRD or a product requirement document, a BRD, a business requirement document, and the overall architecture of the project is given to the agent. And the multiple agents then break down the system into smaller prompts, smaller tickets, and overall execution plan. And the overall loop looks like plan, execute, and evaluate, right? So each of the agent in the whole system, based on the roles defined, does this whole autonomous execution of the whole process. In this case, you need a persistent organizational memory, typically provided through wikis, provided through the Jira-like ticketing systems, or even like newer tools like the Graphify or LLM Wiki as a overall organizational memory, plus organizational level agents.md files, right? So this is how it happens, or this is how it should happen when it comes to the agentic SDLC process. So how do we build this out, right? So this is the foundation layer of the whole process, right? So you need four things to be able to build this out. The first is the context. Uh, in this, the agents need access to various code bases that is requires to build the feature out. It requires stories and the tickets in the Jira. It also has to have monitoring and telemetry and cloud infrastructure access to be able to understand and provide meaningful interventions at various stages. It also needs knowledge. Knowledge is basically team-specific conventions, architectural decisions, and historical patterns, and also like global best practices which are available in for the development of this process across the world that are being followed today. And then there needs to be a way of multiplayer collaboration between multiple agents. How do they talk to each other? How does the handoff happen from one agent to another without losing context or without the ball dropping between the handoff that happens, right? And last but not the least, governance, one of the most important aspects of the overall process, so that auditable guardrails are there and there are strict rules over tool invocations and basically wherever there is a agent involved, least privilege access should be given to that agent. This is how the overall blueprint of a fully autonomous agentic SDLC could look like, right? When I say could look like, because there could be multiple other agents that could be involved, but this is something that a bare minimum would look like, right? So you have a business analyst agent, which is invoked by a product owner to start the process through a PRD or BRD, which is broken down into epics and stories, which goes to a design agent, which creates the design artifacts. And based on how the logic is, most likely a backend agent would be invoked first and then a front end agent, or they could be in parallel as well. Once that coding is done, the code base would be given or committed to the repository where a code review agent would then look at it, generate the PR comments, do the logic validation, linting, etc. And then human in the loop would come in where the human would approve the PR request. And then the QA agent would basically run the QA tests before the code or the product is basically shipped. In this case, even a DevOps agent can be involved to automate the DevOps process. And then from staging to production, and this whole loop starts again for the new requirements that come in. You can see that there is a special box at the bottom, which is called the harness, which is basically guardrails which have to be set up. Input guardrails, policy and compliance related guardrails, quality checks, security guardrails, human oversight, and observability audit are required and mandated requirements to have a safe and secure agentic SDLC system. And this is a requirement across all agents. Looking at governance and security a little deeper, what's required is data privacy related interventions, which have strict isolation of sensitive data, maybe through least privilege access or masking or anonymization, right? Then there is responsible AI frameworks of policy and continuous monitoring mechanisms. Uh, Least privilege access to minimum necessary repo tool permissions to specific agents, transparency through audit trails, tracking AI decisions and explaining code suggestions, and basically having a red teaming approach of identifying cyber risks and continuous logging and active security monitoring to updated CVE audits. Looking at the traditional SDLC versus agentic SDLC process, the traditional SDLC process development was the largest chunk in the whole process, with planning and review taking some part of it. When it comes to agentic SDLC, planning expands because quality is determined here. Vague ideas, vague tickets will create expensive PRs, and intent must be context grounded before code is written. Similarly, the development shrinks because a lot of the process, which was sequential or constrained by human intervention, can be parallelized and sped up. And the review becomes the bottleneck because where it is one of the most important gates before the code goes out. And this is the last step or the last gate to prevent any kind of a issue or a risk. So now coming from theory to a practical example of how we did it with one of our clients. So this is basically a mutual fund house in India, where we implemented AI models across planning, development, refactoring, testing, etc. uh, to create a microservices based modernization approach. The client was facing scalability and performance issues with the legacy code, and to modernize it, we employed the agentic SDLC process, which made the results 40% faster in response time, and 30% cost optimization was achieved through this process. So if you look at the phases of development, there are like 8 phases from planning to production support, and how we employed different models at different stages. And wherever there was a human in the loop required, we have mentioned the steps here. And throughout the whole process, we also not only created this whole automation, but we also created observability so that we can understand where the effort was going, how much cost we were incurring, and how much ROI we were getting at each stage. So if you look at the two green boxes, it showcases the clear-cut ROI achieved, which is the effort saved, and the maximum effort saved was in the development process, as we saw before. And if you look at the ROI, delivery time was reduced by 40%, and the cost of development was reduced by 30%, which is a huge uh, uh, savings at both the stages. Now we'll be moving to the demonstration. Uh, so what we'll be showcasing is how a Jira requirement moves from workflow context to AI-assisted story creation, giving us measurable delivery insights. So the demo flow is in such a way that BA agent reads context. Uh, we'll look at a few stories, subtasks, and the overall dashboard insights that we have created through our dashboard. So I'll hand it over to Darshit to explain this demo.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. So, as you can see the Jira screen, right? So, first of all, let me give you the context at why we build this, right? I'm just showing you the BA agent end-to-end flow, right? So, in Cygnet, we have 4 or 5 products, right? So, every product have its own BA team, right? Every BA it's write a story, right? They need to add a description, the criteria, right? They need to um, move the story for the requirement and review, right? Whatever the review comes from the leader, they need to understand it. They need to edit the story again. They need to send it back to the review, right? So it's an entire end-to-end process, right? It's a repetitive, slow, and inconsistent across all the products, right? So here you can see the workflow. The very 3 or 4 step is related with only BA. The next step is like from engineering review to the development. It's for the developer. Then it will move to the QA and finally the UAT and the done state. So every stage we have a human in the loop. Means if BA writes the story, it needs go for the review. When developer writes any code, it will go for the review. When tester write the test cases, it's need go for the review. Right. So to build BA agents, we are using our existing Jira tool and the Gitti. Right. So this is not just background services, right? So actually, to create a BA agent, we are using 2 types of memory. One is a short-term memory and one is a long-term memory. Right. So in the long-term memory, we are preserving the sessions, right? Last 100 events of all the Jira tickets, like the creation of the story, subtask creation, the reviewer comments, the estimation, all the events we are storing as a session. And the short-term memory, we are using the context, right? So using that memory, we are creating the stories, subtasks, add comments, all these things. And based on after each creation, there will be human in the loop, right? So the agents will do main the 4 tasks. One is a knowledge-based check. In the knowledge-based checks, we are checking how the story is prepared, right? So based on that preparation, it will move for the review, right? So in the knowledge based check, basically, it's a guardrail, right? So is there any duplicate stories available or not? The acceptance criteria are there or not? If any API related story, so the API documentation or any curl or any postman collection must be there. So all kind of checks we are doing in knowledge based checks. So once that knowledge based checks are done, we are preparing one score. Based on that score, we are generating the subtask. So that subtask are mainly for the BA, QA, backend development, and the front end development, right? So once that all the part is done, we are moving that story to the reviewer. So reviewer will see the all the description, all the task, and add the comments. So based on that comments, agent will identify what is the comment. If it's approved, then it will move the story to in design and solution, right? And if reviewer add any comments, then what agent will understand the comments, edit the story, and again move back to the requirement stage, right? So the here, please understand the agents is edit the story, not the BA. So once the story is added, it will move to the requirement stage. So BA just needs to review it and again move to the requirement and review, right? So this is a back and forth cycle. Until and unless the reviewer approve the story, it can't go to the in design and solution because this stage is start from the engineering part, right? So let me just show you the two story, how the comments are added, how we are adding, the estimates, how we are identifying the comments and move to the next stage. So you can see here, there are two stories already in designing solution. Is for the SSO, right? So the the feature is one, but the two stories created. One is for the admin portal and one is for the API, right? So let me just open the admin portal API. So you can see this story is generated by the agents only. So you can see the description, you can see the acceptance criteria, assumptions, business rule, out of scope, then open the question, right? Even the subtask is created by the agent itself, right? So you can clearly differentiate like it's a BA analysis task, it's a FE development task, it's a backend development task, and this is for the QA testing. So once the story is created, right, you can see the knowledge base check is done on that story, right? And it give us a readiness score. See, the readiness score and the knowledge base check status is completely in not dependent. Means if readiness score is 95, it means your story is well written, right? All the acceptance criteria are met. But the blocker thing is, see, this is the we need a API documentation for the story, right? So that's why the risk is medium, but the KB check is failed. Apart from that, it will go into the existing knowledge base check, whatever the Jira story we store into our database, right? So it give you a suggestion like, please check this story, any duplicacy or not. Before moving to the coding part, it gave you the suggestion. So the here after this suggestion, BA edit the story, right? Until and unless if BA doesn't edit the story, it won't go back to the second check. So you can see here the second KB checks, right? Why it happened? Because we are setting the maximum attempts of 2 KB checks. So the knowledge based checks will be done only 2 times, right? If it still fail, then what we are doing? We are moving that story for the reviewer, right? So here you can see the comments is added. This story has undergone 2 KB checks, has not yet met the readiness criteria, right? So story is being moved to the recommended review for manual BA stakeholder review, right? So it will approved by the BA, right? So once it is approved, the agents will add the comment. So agent will identify this comment, and then after that, story approved by reviewer, Jira agent move this to in design and solution, right? So once we are moving this story into design and solution, right, agents will estimate it according to the requirement, right? So here you can see it's added the 5 story points, right? It added the BA estimate, backend estimate, front end estimate, and the Q estimate, right? So this all part is configurable per the product and per team, right? So you can edit your team velocity into the configuration, so the estimate generated accordingly, right? So here we see one use case means direct the BA reviewer directly approved the story and it will move to the design and solution. Let me just open the second story for the API where after the all 2 KB checks, the reviewer add the comments, add request response in a table format, right? Because the API documentation or the Postman collection were not there, right? So the what the agents will do, agents will add the this table into the story. You can see this table. It's a request response detail. So you can see the endpoint, like for the SSO login, even agents understood like, okay, in the SSO, we need a callback response from the AWS, right? In the SAML response. So you can see the SAML response, access to, I mean, what we need into the callback response, like access token, refresh token, user ID, and roles, right? So this is the generic response we need into the SAML response in the SSO, right? So BA can review this response, they can edit it and move it further, right? So once this table is added by the agent, it will move to the BA again, right? The BA review it and move it back to the requirement and review. So you can see this story description updated. Jira agent move the story back to the requirement for review, a reviewer sign off, right? And then after the approved, it will move to the design and solution and the estimates are added, right? So this is how the agent will understand the comments, right? Edit the story and do the back and forth between BA and the reviewer, right? So right now the BA works will be only the uh, check the description and just review the story and edit the accordingly. Mean BA doesn't need to write story entirely. Mean follow the proper steps and all these things, right? Now let me just show you the one live example, right? You can see here there are 2 stories in a created state, right? So I am just moving this story into the in requirement, right? So after 1 or 2 minutes, the KB checks, the knowledge base checks will be added as a comment. Just wait for 1 or 2 minutes.
So, Darshit, one question for the benefit of the audience.
Hmm.
What is the starting point of this process?
So the starting point can be your backlog, right? I mean, the centralized repo of the Excel, right? Or the wiki pages, right? And even if you want to move one step ahead, like from the email, if we want to get a requirement in particular template, then we can read it and directly move it to the backlog of the Jira. Okay. Let me show you, move it to the dashboard first, right? So until unless comments is added, let me just overview the dashboard. So you can see we have our own product Cygnet Bridge Flow, and we are using this BA agent into our existing product. and we prepared a dashboard for this product only, right? So in this dashboard, you can see how many stories created today, how many knowledge base pass rate, the test case is generated, and what is the AI cost of today, right? So this is the a stack card for the BA, QA, front end, and the back end agent, like how many stories created, token used. So it's an individual, this is the count for individual agents. But the interesting thing is, let me show you. So there's the token usage, the agent wise, the story pipeline, like what is the created state, which story is on a KB checks in requirement in review and design and solution. So the interesting thing is human versus AI agent. Consider here the 40 story is created by a human. It will take 42 hours, but the same story will be created by agent in 35 minutes, right? So it's a time calculation, the time we save, the human cost versus AI cost, and whatever the dollar, I mean, the amount we saved, right? It's completely configurable, like we whatever, I mean, what assumptions we are doing. So assumption is $30 per hour, blended average rate for the BA story creation, like average 3 hours we are spending for the story creation. Suppose QA needs to write a test case per story, we are considering 1.5 hours. For the medium story, if you want to implement any front-end UI, we are considering 6 hours per story, and for the backend, 8 hours per story, right? So whatever the task we did so far, right? The ultimate total is, mean total hours, if we as a human, if you want, we need to spend, it's a 141 hours, right? And the by agent, it will done only 1.5 hour, right? And if you consider it will take more 2 hours, then we are saving so much money here, right? This is the overview dashboard. So we have a separate BA agent dashboard where you can see the token usage by each stage, like KB check, story creation, brainstorm. So there are different stages available, right, on the BA agents, right? So every time the agents create a story, it first reads its own history. The agents get better with every story. The more it runs on your project, the more context is carry. So ultimately, the game of agents is the context and the session we are giving to them, right? So here you can see the input token, output token, right? The story wise checks, how many criteria are written, the time taken, the story estimated versus actual, and this is the live feed we are showing for the BA agents. Right now, let me just open the. So you can see the comments is added 3 minutes ago, right? So the first KB check was done, right? The second KB checks was done, right? And finally, after the two KB checks, right now the requirement is in review for the manual reviewer, right? So that's how the BA agents will complete end-to-end cycle. I think Jaydip, yeah.
Sure. Uh, just let me share the screen again. All right. So what we're looking at here is the automation maturity level, right? So typically, most of us are here at point one, where we are doing activity or task level automation, and typically using AI as co-pilot to develop as of now. Now, what is the next step from here is an integrated solution where things will scale properly, right? So it is a multi-process pattern where tools begin to communicate with each other in our case, for example, the BA agent once completes and once the human review is over, the whole process then moves to the design agent and then the backend and the front end agent. So that's a multi-process pattern, right? Now, as you run this process more and more, and the more context it generates, as Darshit said, the systems learn from patterns and adjust dynamically over time, and hence a data-driven cognitive agentic process is created, and this at scale leads to an end-to-end multi-domain orchestration where tech is augmented with people. So looking at the phase-wise adoption, so first stage is Ignite, where you deploy a single agent, focus on straightforward automation, and AI, which where you do AI-powered code completion, basic documentation generation, and syntax review. The second step is Accelerate, where multi-agent systems tackle complex workflows like intelligent refactoring and automated self-healing test suites. And the third step is the Autonomize, where enterprise-wide agentic ecosystems are implemented across the whole enterprise in various functions and various part of the agentic SDLC process. So looking at this, the natural question arises, right? What is the future of the developer role, right? Uh, so if we look at the major shift is that agents absorb repetitive coding optimization and legacy refactoring. Developers, which is causing the human alpha, right? The alpha is basically uh, the extra X factor that humans bring in is basically the developers migrate to higher order tasks, which is system design, problem decomposition, and eval driven strategy. So the future belongs to teams that think deeply about what needs to be done and orchestrating systems to execute the how. So that is going to be the mandate of the future. So I think we can move to the Q&A. Yeah, over to you, Yogita.
All right. Thank you so much. First things first, Jaideep and Darshit, for taking us through such an insightful session. We are going to take a few more questions now. So the first question here is, how does the platform validate the accuracy and business relevance of AI-generated user stories and test cases before they are promoted into delivery workflows?
So before generating anything, as I said, every agents will have a long-term and the short-term memories, right? Either a context or the session. So based on that context and the session, the test cases will be generated, right? And ultimately, the test cases will be go in the review, not directly it will be executed, right?
All right. The next question we have is, how does the AI solution support enterprise scale regression testing across distributed systems and integrations such as Guidewire, CRM, SAP, JDE, APIs, and downstream platforms?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Okay, how does AI solution support enterprise scale regression testing across CRP, SAP, APIs, and so see, whatever the we build, right? Um, we can deploy it as a on a cluster solution, right? So it can scale horizontally and the vertically, right? But how it will be integrated with the CRM, SAP, and APIs? So the CRM and the SAP, it's having its own API, right? So in our agent, source and the destination is the configurable, right? Whatever is the we are, our core engine is a context and the session. Right now, our input is we are taking input from the Jira and the Gitty. In the coming months, if you are saying get it, get input from the wiki pages or from the CRM or from the SAP, we just need to add a connectors into it, all right? And we just need to change the destination, right? So the core logic, the context and the session management will be same for any source and destination systems.
All right, the next question we have is, what software stack is used to develop this AI agent process? Is it entirely done by Jira agents or third-party agents?
Okay, so we are not using any third-party agents. We are just using a frameworks, right? On that frameworks, we are adding our custom solutions, right? So entirely, this framework is built in a such a way where, as I said, a source can be different and the destination can be different. Only the core part will be remain same.
All right, the next question is how are flaky AI-generated tests identified, quarantined, and automatically remediated over time?
So, uh, as I said, for the long-term memory, we are storing each events. Like, if I give you the example in BA stories, like if reviewer adds a comment and move it and rejected it, like suppose BA writes a story, it will go for the review, and in last 10 stories, it didn't approved, right? So we are storing a success events, we are storing a failure events, right? Based on that events, agents will automatically learn and handle the next steps, right? So for example, if I consider the API story, right? So the in the last 5 stories, is API documentation is not there. Even the BA didn't add any curl, right? So the next mean from next 6 story, agents will identify, okay, the problem is related with the API documentation. It will next story, it will automatically create the API documentation and attach the Postman collection. So the same flow will work in a QA.
All right, we'll take up the last question here. What metrics or evidence can you share showing defect reduction, release acceleration, or product stability improvements after adopting the AI agents?
So as I said, every for every agent or for every stage, we have a human in the loop, right? So in a Jira story, we are considering the comments. For the coding or for the front end and for the back end agents, we are considering the PR reviews. Means if agents is created some code and the developer add a comments for the improvement like a 2 times or 3 times or the 4 times, right? So we are storing that as we are storing that as a log. Means after code generated by the agents, how many comments added by the developers, or it will be directly approved by the developers itself, right? So consider if there is a feature like password change, implement the password change functionality. So agent created core for the front end, agents create backend code or create any APIs, and it will move for the review to the developer. And on very first stage, if developer approved it, it means is a success for the agent. So we are measuring that event, we are measuring that comments, and based on that we are continuously update the knowledge base of agent. Like if story is approved, then automatically the story writing, the story writing methodology, the description, all will be we are saving to the the index file, right? So the next time the agents will have a latest memory.
All right, I think we have a few minutes. If we can take one more question. What LLMs are used underneath the platform, and can the orchestration layer dynamically switch models depending on task complexity or cost optimization?
Yeah. So right now we are using the multiple models. One is from the OpenAI and one is from the cloud, right? So for the edit the story and to edit the story description, we are using the OpenAI LLM, and for the front end development and for the back end development, we are using the cloud models. So yes, it's completely dynamic based on your requirement. When later stage will give you the settings page where you can choose your model for with respect to the agents.
All right. Thank you so much, Darshit. I would request all the attendees, if you have any further questions, you can please scan the QR code and get in touch and book a personal session wherein your queries and concerns will be taken up. And I would really like to thank everyone who joined us today and shared their time with us. I'm pretty sure today's discussion gave us a clear view on how AI agents can support different stages of the software development cycle, from planning to development to testing and to delivery. And it has also helped us understand where teams can reduce repetitive effort, improve productivity, and bring more intelligence into existing workflows. On behalf of Cygnet.One, I thank all of you for attending the webinar today. Have a great evening ahead. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.